Let's talk about how to give a user access in Microsoft SQL Server. So today we'll be looking at how to go about doing the process using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Now, before we're able to give a user access to a database in Microsoft SQL Server, the user must first have a login. So think of it like this. To be able to access the server, you'll need a server credential. This would be your login. So to access a SQL Server, you'll need the SQL Server login account. And then what you will be doing is giving permissions to that login account to be able to access a database. And in giving the permissions to that user to access a particular database, then you'll have to provide the roles that will determine what that user is able to do within that database. So we'll be turning our attentions to the security section. So first we'd want to locate our instance. Then we'll expand our securities folder, expand logins, and look to the individual login account that you want to provide a specific database access to. We'll then right click on the user and select properties. And we'll be navigating to our user mapping section. Now our user mapping section would allow for us to specifically give the user access to whichever database that we are interested in giving. So in this case, we'll be giving this test user access to the AdventureWorks database. So we're going to select this option. And after selecting the option, you are now able to choose a particular role that you'd want that user to have within the database. So for example, by default, you'll have public. However, if you only want the user to be able to read information from the database, then you'll give the user DB_data reader. If you want the user to be able to write to the database, so they're able to make updates and insert, then you'd want to give them the data writer permission. So depending on the use case for the user, you'll associate them with the relevant roles to allow for them to do that necessary action within the database that you're giving access to. Now, SQL Server Management Studio gives you the ability to generate the SQL statement based off of the action that you've performed in the user interface. So if we were to go at the top and click on the drop down where script is, then we see the action, script action to new query window. By selecting that, it generates the SQL statement that would perform the actions that we've just outlined. So it will create the user, test user for login, test user into the AdventureWorks database. And then it will go ahead and use the AdventureWorks database and provide the role DB data reader and add the member test user to that role. So what this means is after executing, the test user will be able to access the AdventureWorks database, and the permissions that they'll have in the database is DB_data reader. So this is just a quick look at how to go about giving a user or creating a user access in a database on a SQL Server. So we're going to execute this statement just to complete the process, and we're seeing that it had completed successfully. So if we were to close this property window and reopen, we should now see where the user has access to the AdventureWorks database with the particular permission provided.